My mother-in-law gifted us a beautiful house for our wedding. 2 weeks later, my parents demanded, "Give this house to your sister immediately, she needs it more than you selfish people do." Mom added harshly, "Some ungrateful people just don't deserve nice things from others." Dad agreed, "Real family members help each other out." Sister smirked, "Stop being a nuisance and just do as we say." But everything changed when my mother-in-law discovered. My name is Amber, and I married my husband Trevor 8 months ago. Trevor comes from what you'd call old money. His family has been wealthy for generations, but they're not flashy about it. They're the type who drive 15-year-old Mercedes and wear clothes until they fall apart, but could buy a small country if they wanted to. My mother-in-law, Stephanie, is the epitome of quiet elegance and grace. My family, on the other hand, is solidly middle class. Dad works in insurance, Mom's a school secretary, and my younger sister Haley has always been the golden child who could do no wrong. Growing up, I was the responsible one who got good grades and stayed out of trouble, while Haley was the charming, outgoing one who got away with everything because she was just so charismatic. When Trevor and I got engaged, Stephanie immediately took me under her wing. She helped plan our wedding, never once making me feel like I wasn't good enough for her son. The wedding was beautiful, elegant but not ostentatious, held at Stephanie's country estate with about 100 guests. During the reception, Stephanie pulled Trevor and me aside. "Darling," she said to me, "I have a wedding gift for you both." She handed us a set of keys and an envelope. Inside was a deed to a gorgeous Victorian house in the historic district of our city. Not a mansion, but a beautiful 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home with original hardwood floors, stained glass windows, and a wraparound porch. The kind of house Trevor and I had driven by and dreamed about but never thought we could afford. "Stephanie, this is too much," I protested, tears in my eyes. "Nonsense," she replied firmly. "Every couple needs a proper home to start their life together. The deed will be transferred to both your names, though it will remain part of our family trust for legal and tax purposes. Consider it an investment in your future family." Trevor was speechless. Even though he grew up wealthy, he'd insisted on making his own way as a software engineer, and we'd been saving for years just to afford a down payment on a modest starter home. My parents seemed genuinely happy for us at the reception. Mom gushed about how lucky I was, and Dad shook Trevor's hand about 50 times. Haley, who was my maid of honor, seemed excited too, though I noticed her asking a lot of questions about the house's value and location. For 2 weeks, Trevor and I were in absolute bliss. We spent our honeymoon in Italy, then came home to start moving into our new house. Stephanie had even arranged for professional cleaners and had some basic furniture delivered so we wouldn't be sleeping on the floor. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Amber, we need to talk," Mom said without preamble when I answered. "Your father and I are coming over, and we're bringing Haley." Something in her tone made my stomach clench. "Is everything okay?" "We'll discuss it when we get there." An hour later, my entire family was sitting in my beautiful new living room, and the atmosphere was tenser than a wire about to snap. "So," Dad began, "we've been thinking about your situation here." "Our situation?" Trevor asked, confused. "This house," Haley chimed in, gesturing around like she owned the place. "It's really nice, Amber. Really, really nice." "Thank you," I said, not understanding where this was going. Mom leaned forward. "Haley's lease is up next month, and she's been having trouble finding a place she can afford." My heart started racing. Surely they weren't going where I thought they were going. "The thing is," Dad continued, "Haley really needs a place to live, and you two have this big house with extra bedrooms. We could get an apartment," Trevor said slowly. "But this is our home." Haley's eyes flashed. "See, that's exactly the attitude I'm talking about. Some people get everything handed to them and suddenly think they're better than everyone else." "Haley, that's not fair," I started, but Mom cut me off. "Give this house to your sister immediately, she needs it more than you selfish people do," Mom said harshly. "Some ungrateful people just don't deserve nice things from others." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" Dad nodded emphatically. "Real family members help each other out. Haley's struggling, and you're sitting pretty in a house you didn't even pay for." "I can't believe you're being so greedy, Amber," Haley added with a smirk. "Stop being a nuisance and just do as we say. It's not like you earned this house." I felt Trevor tense beside me, but I held up a hand before he could speak. "Let me get this straight. You want us to give Haley our house? The house that Trevor's mother gifted to us as a wedding present?" "It's not like you need all this space," Haley said, already eyeing the built-in bookcases. "I've been looking at the market, and do you know how much this place is worth? I could never afford anything this nice on my salary." "That's exactly the point," Mom said. "You don't need something this expensive when your sister is struggling." "Haley works part-time at a boutique by choice," I pointed out. "She turned down a full-time management position last month because she said the hours would interfere with her social life." "Don't you dare judge my life choices," Haley snapped. "Just because you married rich doesn't make you better than me." Trevor finally spoke up. "With all due respect, this house was a gift from my mother to both of us. It's not really anyone else's decision to make." Dad's face reddened. "So now you think you're too good for family? Amber, I raised you better than this." The manipulation was so blatant it took my breath away. "You raised me to be generous and kind, Dad, not to be a doormat." Generous and kind would be helping your sister instead of hoarding wealth, Mom shot back. For 2 hours, they badgered us. They used every manipulation tactic in the book: guilt, shame, accusations of selfishness, threats to cut contact, reminders of everything they'd ever done for me. Haley sat there with that self-satisfied smirk, occasionally chiming in with comments about how she'd decorate her house. Finally, I'd had enough. Get out, I said quietly. What? Mom looked shocked. I said get out of my house. Now. Amber Marie, don't you dare speak to your mother that way, Dad thundered. This conversation is over, Trevor said firmly, standing up. You need to leave. Haley actually laughed. Fine, but don't come crying to us when your fancy mother-in-law gets tired of supporting you and kicks you to the curb. That was the last straw for Trevor. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave immediately before I say something I'll regret. After they left, I collapsed on the couch and cried. Trevor held me while I sobbed about how my own family had called me selfish and ungrateful for not giving away our home. Should we tell my mother? Trevor asked gently. No, I said firmly. This is between us and them. I don't want to drag Stephanie into our family drama. That was my first mistake. Over the next few weeks, my family launched a campaign of harassment that would have impressed a military strategist. They called constantly, sent guilt-laden text messages, and even had relatives I barely knew calling to tell me I was being unreasonable. Haley posted passive-aggressive things on social media about family members who forget where they came from. Mom told everyone at church that I was refusing to help my struggling sister despite having more than I could ever need. Dad even showed up at Trevor's work to try to convince him to talk sense into me. The worst part was how they twisted everything. According to them, I was a spoiled brat who had married for money and now thought I was too good for my family. They conveniently left out the part where they wanted me to give away my house. Trevor was furious, but I begged him not to escalate things. They're still my family, I kept saying, even as they made my life miserable. The harassment escalated when they started involving extended family. Aunt Denise, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, called crying about how disappointed she was in me. Uncle Scott left a voicemail saying he was ashamed to be related to someone so selfish. Even my elderly grandmother was somehow convinced to call and lecture me about family values. Each conversation followed the same script. They'd start with disappointment, move to guilt, then escalate to anger when I refused to budge. It was like they'd all attended the same manipulation workshop. The breaking point came when Haley showed up at my workplace during my lunch break. I worked as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized consulting firm, and she waltzed into our reception area like she owned the place. We need to talk, she announced loudly enough for half the office to hear. I was mortified. Haley, this is my workplace. You can't just, oh, so now you're too important to talk to your own sister? She crossed her arms and planted herself in one of the waiting chairs. Fine. I'll wait until you're ready to have an adult conversation. My boss, Mr. Franklin, poked his head out of his office. Amber, is everything all right? Everything's fine, I said quickly, shooting Haley a warning look. We'll just be a minute. Haley smirked. Actually, Mr. Franklin, I was hoping to speak with you about my sister's situation. My blood ran cold. Haley, don't you dare. See, Amber's been having some family issues lately, Haley continued, ignoring my mortified expression. She's been keeping secrets from people who care about her, and it's really affecting her judgment. Mr. Franklin looked confused and uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but I don't think this is. Did you know, Haley interrupted, that Amber's new family gave her a house worth over $500,000? Just gave it to her. No strings attached. I wanted to disappear into the floor. My coworkers were pretending not to listen, but I could see them exchanging glances. And now, Haley continued, warming to her audience, she's refusing to help her own sister who's about to be homeless. All because she thinks she's too good for the family that raised her. Haley, stop, I hissed. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? Haley's voice pearled. You're the one who turned your back on your family for money, and I'm making a scene? Mr. Franklin cleared his throat. Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a place of business. Haley's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculating look underneath. Of course. Everyone always takes Amber's side. Poor little Amber, so perfect and innocent. She stood up and looked directly at me. You know what, Amber? Keep your fancy house. But don't expect me to be there when your perfect new life falls apart. After she left, I spent the rest of the day fielding awkward questions from coworkers and trying to salvage my professional reputation. It was humiliating and infuriating, but mostly it was eye-opening. Haley had deliberately tried to embarrass me at work, knowing it could affect my career. That evening, I was still shaking with anger when Trevor came home. They're escalating, I told him about Haley's workplace ambush. Trevor's jaw tightened. Amber, this has to stop. They're affecting your work now. I know, but what can we do? They're family. No, Trevor said firmly. Family doesn't sabotage each other's careers. Family doesn't show up at your workplace to humiliate you. That weekend, things got worse. Mom called Saturday morning, sounding distressed. Amber, your father's been having stress headaches and trouble sleeping, she said. The doctor says he needs to reduce stress, and you know what's been weighing on his mind. My heart sank. Mom, if Dad needs to see a doctor about stress, he needs his daughter to stop being selfish and help her family. Mom's concern turned to anger. Do you want your father to make himself sick over this? It was emotional manipulation at its finest, but it worked. I found myself agreeing to meet them for dinner to discuss things reasonably. The dinner was at their house, and I walked into what was essentially an intervention. Mom, Dad, Haley, and even Haley's best friend Taylor were there, all looking at me with expressions ranging from disappointment to barely concealed hostility. Amber, Dad began, looking pale and tired, we've been thinking about a compromise. I sat down warily. What kind of compromise? Well, Mom said, we understand that you can't just sign over the house. But what if Haley moved in with you? Just temporarily, until she gets back on her feet. She could take the third bedroom, Haley added quickly. I wouldn't be in your way. I'd even help with utilities. I looked around the room, seeing the hope in their faces, and felt the familiar weight of family guilt pressing down on me. I need to talk to Trevor about this. Why? Haley demanded. It's just a temporary arrangement. Unless you really are too selfish to help your own sister. It's not about being selfish, I protested. It's about major decisions that affect both of us. Everything affects both of you now, Dad said bitterly. God forbid you make a decision without consulting your rich husband. Taylor, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. Amber, I don't understand why this is such a big deal. You have a huge house, and Haley just needs one room. It seems like a no-brainer. Because it's not about the room, I said, finally finding my voice. It's about the principle. They demanded I give Haley the entire house, and when I refused, now they want me to compromise by giving her part of it. So you admit you're being unreasonable, Mom said triumphantly. No, I'm pointing out that you're trying to pressure me into giving Haley what she wants through guilt and emotional manipulation. Haley's eyes flashed. Pressure? We're your family, Amber. Since when is asking for help considered pressure? Since you demanded I give away my house and called me selfish when I refused. Since you showed up at my workplace to embarrass me. Since you're using Dad's health concerns as leverage. The room went silent. Dad looked genuinely hurt. My health isn't leverage, Amber. It's a real concern. I felt terrible immediately. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to minimize your health issues. Yes, you did, Haley interrupted. You meant every word. You think we're all just manipulating you because you can't stand the thought that maybe, just maybe, you're being a selfish brat. Haley, enough, Mom said, but her tone was tired rather than angry. No, it's not enough, Haley continued. I'm tired of tiptoeing around Amber's feelings. She got lucky, married into money, and now she thinks she's better than all of us. That's not true, I said, but Haley was on a roll. It is true. Look at you, Amber. Designer clothes, expensive hair, fancy neighborhood. When's the last time you even came to visit us? When's the last time you called just to check in, not because you wanted something? The accusation stung because there was some truth to it. I had been pulling away from my family lately, but it was because every interaction had become about the house. I've been busy, I said weakly. Busy with what? Your perfect life? Your perfect husband? Your perfect house that's too good to share with your own sister? Tears started flowing down my cheeks. Haley, please. I love you. I love all of you. But I can't give you my house, and I can't let you move in because it's not about the house. It's about the fact that you think you're entitled to it. Entitled? Haley laughed bitterly. I'm not entitled to anything. I work hard at a job that barely pays the bills, I live in a tiny apartment, and I struggle every month. Meanwhile, you get handed a mansion and act like you earned it. I didn't ask for the house, I said. Stephanie gave it to us as a wedding gift. Exactly, Dad said quietly. You didn't ask for it, you don't need it, and you won't share it. What does that make you, Amber? I looked around the room at these people who had raised me, loved me, and were now looking at me like I was a stranger. The worst part was that I was starting to doubt myself. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just let Haley move in temporarily. But then I thought about Trevor, about how excited he'd been about starting our life together in our own home. I thought about Stephanie's kindness and generosity, and how betrayed she'd feel if I gave away or shared the gift she'd chosen specifically for us. It makes me someone who values the gift she was given and respects the person who gave it, I said finally. Haley's face twisted with rage. Fine. Be that way. But don't expect us to be here when your perfect life falls apart. I left that night feeling more confused and guilty than ever. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just let Haley move in temporarily. But when I got home and saw Trevor waiting for me, worried and caring, I realized something important. My family was trying to make me choose between them and my marriage, between guilt and happiness, between their wants and my needs. How did it go? Trevor asked gently. I told him about the evening, about their compromise offer, about my growing doubts. Amber, he said carefully, do you want Haley to move in? I thought about it honestly. No. I don't. I want our home to be ours, especially as we're starting our marriage. But I feel so guilty. Why do you feel guilty for wanting to enjoy a gift that was given to you? Because they're my family, and Haley is struggling. Haley is struggling because she chooses to work part-time and turn down a management position. That's not your fault or your responsibility. Trevor was right, but it didn't make the guilt any easier to bear. The next week was torture. Mom called daily with updates about Dad's health, always making sure to mention how the family situation was affecting his recovery. Haley left increasingly hostile voicemails. Even well-meaning relatives kept calling to mediate. The turning point came when my grandmother called. Grandma Pearl was 86 and had always been my favorite relative. She was sharp, funny, and had never been one to sugarcoat her opinions. "Amber, honey," she said after we'd exchanged pleasantries, "I need to tell you something about your parents and Haley." "Grandma, if this is about the house, it is about the house, but not the way you think. Honey, they came to see me last week." My heart sank. "What did they say?" "They told me you'd married a rich man and gotten a fancy house, and now you were being selfish and refusing to help Haley. They wanted me to call and guilt you into sharing." I felt sick. "Grandma, that's not what happened." "I know, honey. I know because I raised your mother, and I know how she operates. But here's what they didn't expect. I asked them what they'd done to help Haley before expecting you to solve her problems." "What did they say?" "They couldn't answer. Because they haven't done anything. Your father could co-sign a loan for Haley to get a better apartment. Your mother could help her with a down payment from their savings. They could have encouraged her to take that management job instead of letting her coast." Grandma's words hit me like a revelation. They want me to solve Haley's problems instead of helping her themselves. Exactly. And honey, there's something else. Haley's been telling people she's going to inherit a house. Not that she's hoping to get help from you, but that she's definitely getting a house soon. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. She's been planning this from the beginning. I'm afraid so, honey. And your parents have been helping her plan it. After I hung up with Grandma, I sat in my beautiful living room and finally saw the situation clearly. This wasn't about Haley needing help or family supporting each other. This was about entitlement, manipulation, and greed. They had targeted me specifically because they saw Trevor's wealth as an opportunity. They'd calculated that I'd be the weak link, the one they could guilt and pressure into compliance. But they had miscalculated in one crucial way. They'd assumed I would prioritize their demands over my marriage and my new family. They'd forgotten that I had chosen Trevor, and that choice meant something. Then Haley made her fatal error. I found out through a mutual friend that Haley had been telling people she was moving into a house from a relative and had actually started using my address for various purposes. She tried to have some mail sent there, told potential roommates they could move in the following month, and had even contacted a few contractors about renovations she wanted to make. But the final straw came when Stephanie called me, confused. "Darling," she said, "I just had the strangest conversation with someone claiming to be your sister. She called asking about transferring the house deed and wanted to know about property taxes and maintenance costs." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell her?" "I told her she must have the wrong number, of course. But Amber, how did she get my contact information? And why would she think she had any claim to your house?" I knew I had to come clean. "Stephanie, can you come over? There's something I need to tell you." When Stephanie arrived an hour later, I told her everything. Trevor and I laid out the whole sordid story, the demands, the manipulation, the harassment, and now Haley's apparent delusion that she was actually going to get our house. Stephanie listened in silence, her expression growing colder with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "So your family believes that because I gave you this house, they have some sort of claim to it?" she asked finally. "That's what it seems like," I said miserably. Stephanie Coleman's laugh was like ice cracking. "How interesting." I should have recognized that tone. Trevor certainly did, he actually winced. "Stephanie," Trevor said carefully, "what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," she said with a kind of smile that probably made business rivals break out in cold sweats, "that it's time I met Amber's family properly." The next day, Stephanie called my parents and invited them to lunch at the country club. She was gracious and charming on the phone, explaining that she'd like to get to know her new daughter-in-law's family better and that she'd be happy to sponsor them as her guests for the afternoon. Mom was thrilled. She'd been dying to see Stephanie's world up close, and the opportunity to lunch at the exclusive Willowbrook Country Club was too good to pass up. She immediately went shopping for a new outfit and spent the morning getting her hair done. Stephanie picked me up an hour before lunch. "I want you there to witness this," she said. "But let me handle everything." The country club was exactly what you'd expect, old money elegance with leather chairs, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings of dead rich people. Mom and Dad looked impressed but slightly out of place. Haley looked like Christmas morning, clearly calculating how this connection could benefit her. Stephanie was the perfect hostess, ordering wine and making small talk about the weather and my parents' occupations. She complimented Mom's dress and asked Dad about his golf game. Haley practically preened under the attention. Then, after the main course arrived, Stephanie set her trap. "I understand there's been some confusion about the house I gifted to Amber and Trevor," she said pleasantly, cutting her salmon with surgical precision. Mom's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Oh, well, we were just discussing family helping family." "Of course," Stephanie agreed smoothly. "Family is so important. That's why I wanted to clear up any misunderstandings personally." Haley leaned forward eagerly. Mrs. Coleman, I hope Amber explained that I'm in a really tough spot right now. I mean, that house has 3 bedrooms, and there's really just the 2 of them. Stephanie's smile could have frozen hell. How thoughtful of you to be concerned about efficient use of space, Haley. Tell me, what's your current living situation? I'm in a studio apartment in the Arts District, Haley said. It's tiny and expensive, and the lease is up soon. I've been looking everywhere, but everything in my price range is either too small or in a bad neighborhood. I see. And what's your profession? I work at Bella's boutique downtown, Haley said proudly. It's very exclusive. Full-time? Stephanie asked innocently. Haley's cheeks pinked slightly. Well, part-time right now, but... And you turned down a full-time management position there, I understand. The temperature at the table dropped about 10 degrees. Haley shot me a dirty look. Amber told you that? Amber tells me many things, Stephanie said. We're quite close. She also mentioned that your parents feel she should give you the house I gifted to her and Trevor for their wedding. Dead silence. Dad cleared his throat. Now, Mrs. Coleman, I think there might be some misunderstanding. Oh, I don't think so, Stephanie interrupted smoothly. In fact, I think I understand perfectly. You believe that because I gave my son and daughter-in-law a house, your daughter somehow deserves to have it instead. Mom's face was turning red. We just thought, since Haley is struggling, and they have so much space they don't need, Stephanie repeated thoughtfully. In the house I specifically chose for them to start their marriage and future family. The house I had thoroughly inspected, professionally cleaned, and partially furnished for their comfort. Haley was starting to look less confident. Mrs. Coleman, I'm sure we can work something out that benefits everyone, can we? Stephanie's voice was still pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Because from what I understand, you've already begun telling people you're moving into your house next month. You've had mail redirected there and contacted contractors about renovations. Haley went white. How did you? Haley, Stephanie said, leaning forward slightly, did you really think you could make claims on property I own without me finding out? You own? Dad sputtered. But you gave it to them. Stephanie's laugh was musical and terrifying. Oh, my dear man, I think you misunderstood how these things work. Let me explain. She opened her purse and pulled out a folder. You see, while I did gift the house to Amber and Trevor, the deed includes certain family trust provisions that I retain oversight of. They have full rights to live there, renovate, and enjoy the property as their own, but the trust structure provides certain protections and tax advantages. She spread several legal documents on the table. This is the trust documentation. This is the deed with its provisions. And this, she said, placing a final paper down with a flourish, is a cease and desist letter from my attorney to Haley, demanding she stop representing herself as having any claim to the property. Haley's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Furthermore, Stephanie continued, I've taken the liberty of having my security company install cameras around the property after Haley was seen measuring windows and speaking to contractors about work that was never authorized. The security footage revelation hit Haley like a slap. You can't do this. Actually, I can do exactly this. It's my property, and you've been trespassing. Mom found her voice. Mrs. Coleman, surely we can discuss this reasonably. Reasonably? Stephanie's eyebrows pearl. Like how you reasonably demanded my son and daughter-in-law give away their home? Like how you reasonably called Amber selfish and ungrateful for not complying with your demands? She turned to Dad. Or like how you reasonably showed up at Trevor's workplace to pressure him into convincing his wife to give away the house I chose specifically for them? Dad's face was purple now. Now see here, lady. Stephanie's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow became 10 times more intimidating. Sir, I'm Stephanie Whitmore Coleman. My family has been in this city for 5 generations. I sit on the boards of 3 hospitals, 2 universities, and the symphony. When I see here, entire charity events get organized and $1 million donations change hands. She leaned back in her chair, suddenly looking completely relaxed. But more importantly, I'm Amber's mother-in-law and I care about her happiness and well-being. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. Haley tried one last desperate gambit. Look, I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding, but Amber has always been the lucky one. She got the good grades, she got the scholarships, she got the rich husband. Stop. Stephanie's voice cut through Haley's whining like a knife. Amber got good grades because she worked hard. She got scholarships because she earned them. She got my son because she's a wonderful person who makes him happy, not because she was hunting for money. She turned to my parents. And she got my respect and affection because she treats people with kindness and gratitude, qualities that seem to be in short supply in your family. Mom was crying now. You don't understand what it's like, watching one child get everything while the other struggles. You're absolutely right, Stephanie agreed. I don't understand that, because in my family, we celebrate each other's successes instead of trying to tear them down. She started putting the papers back in her folder. But let me help you understand something. The house stays with Amber and Trevor. Haley will not be moving in, visiting without permission, or having any further contact with my property managers or contractors. And if we refuse to accept this? Dad asked belligerently. Stephanie's smile was absolutely arctic. Then you'll discover exactly how unpleasant it can be to have legal problems with someone who has very good lawyers and a lot of patience for lengthy court battles. She stood up gracefully. Lunch was lovely. Thank you for helping me understand the family dynamics better. Amber, shall we go? I stood up on shaky legs, still processing what had just happened. Stephanie had systematically demolished my family's entire campaign with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a general. As we walked toward the exit, I heard Haley hiss to Mom, "This is all Amber's fault. She turned her against us." Stephanie stopped walking. Without turning around, she said loudly enough for half the dining room to hear, "No, dear. You did that all by yourselves." The ride home was quiet until Stephanie finally spoke. "I'm sorry you had to see that side of me, darling. But I will not tolerate anyone trying to manipulate or take advantage of my family." "They are my family too," I said weakly. "No," Stephanie said firmly. "Family doesn't treat each other the way they've been treating you. Family supports and celebrates each other's happiness." That evening, the phone calls started. My parents were furious, demanding to know how I could let Stephanie humiliate them like that. Haley left a voicemail calling me every name in the book and swearing she'd never speak to me again. I was devastated, but Trevor was proud. "She stood up for us," he pointed out. "She saw how they were treating you and she protected you." Over the next few weeks, the story spread through our social circles. The version my family told painted me as a gold digger who had turned my rich mother-in-law against them. But the truth was harder to suppress, especially after several people at the country club witnessed Stephanie's devastating takedown. Haley did move out of her studio apartment, but not into my house. She ended up in a smaller, cheaper place across town and was forced to take the full-time management position she'd previously turned down. Mom and Dad stopped speaking to me entirely, except to send the occasional guilt-laden text about how I'd chosen money over family. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd accused me of being selfish and ungrateful, but their behavior had been the epitome of both traits. They'd felt entitled to something that was never theirs and had attacked me when I wouldn't hand it over. But the real revelation came 3 months later when my cousin Kristen called me. "Amber, I need to tell you something about Haley and your parents." Apparently, the house scheme hadn't been Haley's idea originally. My parents had been planning it from the moment they heard about Stephanie's wedding gift. They figured that if they could pressure Trevor and me into giving Haley the house, they could all move in together. Dad was planning to take early retirement, and Mom wanted to quit her job. They'd seen my marriage to Trevor as their ticket to an easier life. Haley had been willing to go along with it because they promised her she could rent out the extra bedrooms and basically live for free while they all enjoyed the benefits of the upscale neighborhood. When Kristen told me this, I felt sick. My own parents had tried to manipulate me into giving away my home so they could essentially retire early on my husband's family's generosity. I told Stephanie about this final revelation, and her response was swift. She had her lawyers send a formal letter to my parents, making it clear that any further attempts to contact me, Trevor, or anyone in the Coleman family would result in restraining orders and harassment charges. The letter stopped after that. It's been 6 months now since the country club confrontation, and I'm finally at peace with how everything played out. Trevor and I love our house, and we're planning to start a family soon. Stephanie has become the mother figure I needed, someone who protects and supports without trying to control or manipulate. My parents made their choice when they decided my happiness was less important than their financial comfort. Haley made her choice when she decided she was entitled to something that was never hers. Sometimes I wonder if they ever realized how badly they miscalculated. They thought they could pressure me into compliance because I'd always been the good daughter who did what was expected. But they forgot that being good doesn't mean being a pushover. They also seriously underestimated Stephanie Coleman. She spent decades navigating high society politics and boardroom battles. 3 middle-class wannabe manipulators were barely a warm-up for her. The funniest part? Haley finally saw the house she'd wanted so badly when she drove by it last month. Stephanie had arranged for professional landscapers to redo the entire front yard, and there was a moving truck in the driveway. For a moment, Haley probably thought her family had won after all. Then she saw me directing the movers and realized we were just getting new furniture. According to Kristen, Haley sat in her car for 10 minutes, just staring at what could have been hers if she'd been a different person with a different family. I don't feel bad for her. I don't feel bad for any of them. They taught me an important lesson about entitlement and manipulation, and Stephanie taught me an even more important lesson about standing up for yourself and choosing the family that actually loves and supports you. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and being grateful for what you have, especially when what you have is a mother-in-law who will take down anyone who tries to mess with her family.